We took all the money that Peter Andre made from his 4 number ones and we spent it on Ash, Garbage, Muse. And then we had a big pop act who everybody really laughed at me, who actually had massive success, called Peter Andre. So we had Mysterious Girl, which was biggest record of the year. I had 3 records that year, all with the word girl in it. So I was superstitious, and I had Ash, Girl from Mars. I had Peter Andre, Mysterious Girl, and I had Garbage, Stupid Girl. And there was a period from kind of June till September when they all went top 5. So it was a running joke. I'm only going to work with acts who write songs called Girl. So Mushroom Records exploded at that point. And basically we took all the money that Peter Andre made from his 4 number ones and his massive album, and we spent it on Ash, Garbage, Muse, 07, Paul Oakenfold, Cable, Seafood. You know, we spent all the success that Peter Andre had on growing the company. And that works because a lot of those artists went on to become massive. So the company, Mushroom, exponentially grew to the point where the people in Australia who owned it realised they could sell it for an awful lot of money to News International, to Rupert Murdoch. So James Murdoch became my boss.
So was that like the ultimate corporate entity then? Because
well, that was quite funny. Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah, it was so ultimate that no one knew what to do with it.
Did it bother you going from corporate to independent and getting to do what you want to go into like even
ironic.
more corporate?
I thought it was quite ironic that we went from a big corporate RCA Records, Sony, Polydor, RCA, and then we went out in a kind of indie or die independent thing, and then quite quietly we were sold to the biggest, nastiest motherfucking corporation in the world, and I had the son of the people who owned that corporation as my boss. I thought there was a kind of a sweet irony in there, because we were playing the independent, we were winning AIM awards, we were an independent record label, but quietly we were owned by somebody who was worth $2.2 billion. And that was just James's share. James's share of News Corp was $2.2 billion. But because this is a complicated, but I'll try and simplify it really simply. Because the deal was done by the guy who owned Mushroom Records, Michael Gudinski, and Rupert Murdoch. The deal was done in a lift in Los Angeles, and Michael was going to sell a quarter of the company to a company in Japan, Pony Canyon, and Rupert said, "No, don't do that. I'll buy half. You run it all, and we'll just let it all happen. And you're in charge, and we can just quietly own half of Mushroom Records." And then we had the success, so he bought the other half. So we suddenly were owned by, and it was quite sweet because the deal was done by a company called News Corp, which was the holding company that the family owned. The big corporation was News International, which was the newspapers and the Sun and, the film studios in LA and the whole company. But the family company, News Corp, was the holding company. And our deal was with News Corp. So none of the lawyers or the execs in News International wanted anything to do with us. And they owned Sky, they owned the Sun, they owned the Times, they owned, big Hollywood film studios. But because we plugged into the family through a handshake with Rupert and Michael in a lift in LA, no one wanted to do with us. So we had total freedom to do whatever we wanted to do. Hence, we spent so much money, it was obscene, and we had massive success because I had no accountants or lawyers telling me what to do. We just went off and did whatever we wanted to do. And James was brilliant. James Murdoch was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Let's go do it." And Muse were worth it. They were 17. Muscle Museum was a great song. Unintended was like, wow, that's brilliant. Bellamy was a genius. It was like this thing walking, moving around on stage. I saw him in a city in Manchester, and then I saw him at the 100 Club. I did that deal on a napkin in a bar in LA with the manager. It was brilliant. And I fell in love with him.
What was it that you thought set them apart?
Oh, well, the band. I mean, they were just amazing musicians. And over 4 or 5 years, I'd kept in touch, and I saw them at Manchester, and I saw them there a couple of times. I met them. They were brilliant. And also I grew up loving the Clash, the Stones, and the Who. And in the early days, they trashed all their gear out. The Who did, because they didn't care. And the 17, 18-year-old kids, they were like, "Wow, this is great." They were fearless. And I learned to trust them. So when they smashed gear, I paid the tour support. And it was again, everyone looks back now, but at the time, everyone was, it was a bit like when I signed Take That. It's like, what are you doing that? They're awful. Why are you doing that? When I signed Muse, everyone said, what the fuck are you signing? Why are you signing a bad Radiohead covers band? And I went, I really like Radiohead. They said, like Radiohead, great, let's sign. Same with the Darkness. They said, why are you, everybody around me was throwing things at me saying, why are you signing a bad Bon Jovi? They're worse than Bon Jovi. They're awful. There's like a pub rock band. Why are you signing that? I went, I really like Bon Jovi, which I did. I went and saw it. I was at the front of Bon Jovi when they came and played London. Living on a Prayer is a great song. So I've always kind of followed my instinct, if that makes sense. And Muse, you could just tell with Muse over there.
And was that as infectious, or had you joined with Mushroom?
Well, that was kind of complicated. They were actually signed. They were signed as we sold the company to News Corp. So they were signed. We made a label up. One of the lawyers said, we need a name for the new label, and I couldn't think of one. So we called it Accident and Emergency. So it was called A&E Records. So if you look on the label copy of all the Muse records, they're signed to a company called A&E, Accident and Emergency. Primarily because a lot of people around me were getting arrested or in hospital at the time. So because it was madness. So they were signed to A&E Records, which was co-owned by, it was a Mushroom label that was and Infectious had an involvement in that, for instance. And then, long story short, Mushroom sold that to News Corp. James Murdoch was my boss. We spent £1 million. They only sold 40,000 records. They weren't very successful in the early days. Now everyone thinks they're great, but it wasn't really until the second or third album that they became huge. And then News Corp sold the company with me running it to Roger Ames at Warner's, and I went into a company called East West, and I took all my bands. So I took Garbage and Muse and Ash with me, and we turned East West. I named East West. I renamed it. I called it Atlantic Records because no one had heard of East West, but Atlantic was one of the imprints, and I knew Atlantic from Led Zeppelin or Aretha Franklin so I rang Roger up. He was the chairman of the world, CEO of the world. And I just said, can we change the label from East West to Atlantic, please? He went, yes, but don't tell anybody because you're not allowed to do it. It'll take you 6 months to do it, and all the lawyers will say don't do it. Just when you pick up the phone, just answer it Atlantic Records to see what happens. So I did that, and I designed a logo, and we repainted the foyer and had the Atlantic logo everywhere, and we became Atlantic Records. And nobody really knew. And by that time, it was too late to do anything. So and that's when I negotiated the Muse third album, when we put that third record out, which was huge. And they were playing Wembley Arena, and and then they started playing Wembley Stadium. And they just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. They were bombastically massive. The third Muse album, when they were £2 million in the hole, most sane owner of a record label would say, no, don't do that. And James is like, yeah, but they're great, aren't they? It's only money, let's pick that up, Because he was worth $2.2 billion at the time, so he didn't care. My job was to make James Murdoch look good. So when he's on the cover of the magazines, he could talk about Raucous Records, the hip-hop label, and Garbage and Muse.
If it had been any other label, do you think they would have been picked up? Would that have tanked their career?
Most normal record labels would have
they
dropped
not be
them.
here if it wasn't for...
Yeah, no, they would have been dropped. I mean, they would have gone and signed somebody else. It's like Simple Minds were on Arista, and they dropped and went to Virgin because Arista couldn't afford to pick them up because the grown-ups in the room said, oh, we spent £2 million, let's not do it. So, no, a lot of my career has been that kind of, the serendipity of zeitgeist of success or failure.
So you weren't sort of jaded by the corporate thing from being fired?
No, I think it was quite funny. I mean, I was 16, I was punk rock. I was a Clash fan in 1976, so the fact I was still in the room was quite ironic.